Most people remember Starship Mine as the episode where Captain Picard turns into John McClane. The fun one, the late season action romp. Picard crawling through Jeffrey's tubes and going toe to toe with a group of mercenaries. And on the surface, yeah, you can look at it like that, but that reading never sat quite right with me. Because to me, Picard's just not acting like an action hero in this episode. He behaves like somebody who's done this before, someone who knows exactly how to behave when they're being hunted. And that's the key. Starship Mine isn't an episode with Captain Picard pretending to be an action hero. It's Picard dissociating, falling back into survival mode. Right, before we dig too deeply into this, as always, please remember this is just my personal view, and fortunately Star Trek has always been big enough to support more than one reading. So agree with me, disagree with me, I don't mind. Just let me know in the comments section what you think. Now that's out of the way, we can get into it. So by the time we get to Starship Mine, Picard is not the man that he once was. He's older, he's wearier, and crucially, well, this poor bastard's carrying a lot more weight. So let's have it right here, because Captain Picard at this point is a man who has been assimilated by the Borg, stripped of his body, stripped of his identity, and then forced to watch himself commit mass murder. He'd been tortured by the Cardassians to the point that the very idea of reality began to fracture. He is a man who has quite literally sent people to their deaths, all because that's what being in command required at the time. So by this point in the series, Picard isn't really an explorer anymore, he's just surviving. And Starship Mine quietly acknowledges that. There's something else worth sitting here with as well, because Picard's trauma isn't just abstract, it's very physical. The Borg didn't just threaten him, they kidnapped him, they rewired him, they took control of his body whilst leaving his mind awake enough to see what was happening. Then later on, Gul Madred, he does something just as bad, just more quietly. He takes Picard's sense of reality apart piece by piece, not even to extract information, but to break the idea that Picard owns his own perceptions. These aren't the kind of experiences you get over quickly. You don't just have a little speech on the bridge or one single session with Councillor Troy. They teach a very specific lesson, that safety lies in anticipation, withdrawal and control of space. And in Starship Mine, that is exactly what we see. Because Picard doesn't try to win, he tries to retain agency. He chooses when he moves, when he's seen, when he acts. That's not heroism. That's somebody reclaiming bodily autonomy the only way they know how. There's also something very, very clever in the way this episode is set up. Yes, it's just a maintenance procedure, and yes, the Enterprise has to be evacuated, but listen to Captain Picard's log entry. He's talking about all of the hard work the Enterprise has been doing, all of the hours logged at high warp have caused this build-up of toxicity that needs to be swept away. And then it does something even cleverer. Well, that trauma is very subtly alluded to in just how the writers choose to put Captain Picard on the Enterprise on his own in the first place. Because the only reason Picard's up there is to go and get his saddle. And the only reason Picard wants to get his saddle is because he wants to avoid a party. That's not heroism, that's withdrawal. Because when people have gone through the amount of trauma that Picard has gone through at this point, they don't always run from danger, but they will often run from intimacy, from noise, from unpredictability. Picard isolates himself. He can't think of anything worse than watching Data practice his small talk subroutine, hence the reason he's back on board the Enterprise trying to find his saddle. And then, inevitably, the danger arrives. And what follows is often described as Picard goes Rambo. But watch his behaviour closely. He barely speaks, there's no banter, he moves quickly, he moves quietly, he moves economically. He avoids confrontation wherever possible. This isn't bravado, this is shutdown. He doesn't have any grand plan really, apart from stop the mercenaries. He hides, he waits, he controls his breathing. These ain't the instincts of a man improvising. These are the actions of a man whose nervous system is just so fried by all the trauma that he's had the past couple of years that he instinctively knows what to do already. And look at the ship itself, the mighty floating city what is the Galaxy class starship, normally a hive of activity. Well, not this Enterprise. The Enterprise we see in Starship Mine is, well, dark and wounded. Corridors without voices, rooms without any warmth, systems shutting down one by one. This ain't just a setting, this is a psychological mirror. The ship has always functioned as an extension of Picard. His home, his responsibility, his moral body. Here it's been hollowed out, stripped down to bare survival. And Picard moves through it with eerie familiarity, like muscle memory, like somebody navigating a place they once learned to hide inside. And this for me is where the Die Hard comparison stops working. John McClane survives by asserting himself, by noise, by a stubborn refusal to give up space. Picard don't do that here. Picard survives by becoming smaller. He doesn't dominate the environment, he vanishes into it. He doesn't ever escalate, he de-escalates internally. One of the most telling moments in this episode isn't a fight, it's a pause. Picard just crouched there in silence, listening, waiting, choosing stillness over action. That's not an action hero, that's a trauma response. There's a concept in trauma psychology called hypercompetence. It's the ability for somebody to perform exceptionally well whilst under threat, precisely because the body has been there before. Emotions switch off, focus sharpens, the world narrows. That's Picard in Starship Mine. He isn't enjoying this, he isn't showing off, and he ain't even that angry. What he is in actual fact calm in a way that's quite unsettling, because in this moment, calm isn't peace, it's dissociation. What makes this episode quietly devastating is that nobody actually acknowledges what's happening here. There's no aftermath scene, there's no concerned little chat with Councillor Troy, there's no reflection. Picard just resumes command as if nothing unusual has happened. What's striking about this is the script never gives us any language to describe what's happening. Nobody ever says the word trauma. Captain Picard has fostered a real family around him, yet none of them check in on him. None of them ask him, hey, Jean-Luc, are you okay? And that feels deliberate, because men of Picard's generation, and frankly men of a certain temperament, don't process survival experiences by naming them. They compartmentalise, they return to duty, they carry on. The episode respects that, even as it quietly shows us the cost. There's no breakdown here. There's no tears, there's no confession, just competence. And sometimes competence is just a mask that trauma wears when it's been living with you for such a long time. Survival modes aren't always dramatic, but they're always efficient. I think all this is the reason that this episode lingers in the memory more than perhaps it should. Not because Picard wins, he practically always wins, but because for once, we see who Picard is when he thinks no one's watching. No speeches, no bridge crew, no ideals to perform. Just a man alone on his ship doing what he knows to do when the universe starts closing in on him. And that, I think, is why Starship Mine really matters. Star Trek often tells us who Captain Picard is through philosophy, through eloquence, through sheer moral clarity. Starship Mine tells us who he is through silence. And sometimes silence is the most honest language there is. Anyway, those are my thoughts, and that was my Christmas special. And right now you're screaming away at me going, hey, British Sci-Fi, that wasn't very Christmassy. Well, guess what? It was Christmassy, because that episode was deliberately chosen by me, because for everything I've just said, it is based on Die Hard. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with me on my trauma reading or you don't, it is unashamedly Die Hard. And Die Hard, whether you like it or not as well, is a Christmas film. And this episode is Die Hard in space with a more cerebral John McClane. There's not that many sci-fi Christmas specials, so, you kind of take what you can get. Anyway, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and if you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and hit the like button as well. And a very Merry Christmas from the decline and fall of British Sci-Fi.